I recognize most of the faces here, you've all been here, so I won't tell you too much about our past, but we have created a opportunity to do chesed for the elderly before Hanukkah. So there's 2 dates left. We actually had a nice group go today to help them assemble, like a little bit of arts and crafts type of activity, assemble menorot, Hanukkahot, and then on Hanukkah itself, there's 2 nights that we're going to assist in, like, help them light candles, play some music, share some donuts, maybe some bamba. Anyway, so there are some little flyers in the back with the dates. We really look forward to having some new volunteers. It's a great opportunity. My involvement with the Trugmans, apparently they made Aliyah in 1995, which I have their diet. So soon after, I was involved with Charles Libo, Rabbi Libo, and the SNAP group. I was involved with the logistics, organizing things, and it was a great opportunity to spend time with the rabbi and his wife Rachel. I think it was on a army base or an Air Force base in the middle of nowhere. I really got to appreciate the rabbi's Torah, and he spoke many times in Achlaot, and my wife and I joined many a shirim. So without any further ado, I'll introduce the rabbi. The truth is, his wife isn't here, but she's like, they're always together, and so it's a really nice match. So both the Rabbi Arieh and Rachel Trugman have 35 years of experience in the field of Jewish education. They were a founding family of Moshav Meir Modi'in in 1976, where Rabbi Trugman served several years as director of the Center of Jewish Education, which successfully ran programs for over 5,000 participants from over 25 countries. In 1988, the Trugmans took the position of regional directors of NCSY in Denver, Colorado. The Trugmans returned to Israel in 1995 and are now the directors of Or Chadash, New Horizons in Jewish Experience, a dynamic program they created that has run programs for tens of thousands of participants. Their website, YouTube channel, blog, Twitter, and Facebook have gotten hundreds of thousands of visits. The Trugmans have visited over 40 cities worldwide, leading Shabbatons, giving classes, performing music, and serving as scholars in residence. Their the website is really easy to remember, thetrugmans.com, TheTrugmans.com. Without any further ado, Rabbi.
It's good. So good to see everyone. A lot of very familiar faces here. And I want to thank Rabbi Poston and his wife for inviting us tonight. And I've been following the good work of Yibone for a while. And they're doing great things. So everyone who has a chance to connect with what they're doing, especially all of the chesed, it is a big mitzvah. Big mitzvah. Okay, tonight we're going to be learning about becoming a master of time. It comes basically from this book, which you can find back there. It goes without saying, what I can do in an hour is just an outline, is just teasers of different subjects that have to do with time. The book obviously expands on it greatly. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to try to build this from the foundation up, where we're going to look in various Jewish sources as to what the Torah says about time. From that, we're going to already get hints at what the Torah is telling us about how we should relate to time. And then we are going to look at different attitudes towards time, stories. We're going to then try to connect it to what modern science says about time. And of course, we're going to see how Torah and science are meshing together, not only this area, but virtually all areas. And at the end, we'll try to add some very practical suggestions. So we're going to start at the beginning. That's always the best place. The first Rashi in the Torah. The first Rashi in the Torah asks a rhetorical question. Why does the Torah begin from Bereshit? Shouldn't it start from the first mitzvah? HaChodesh hazeh lechem. The first mitzvah that the Jewish people got in preparation of leaving Egypt. Shouldn't the Torah start there? Because Torah means, at least in the simple meaning, the pshat, hora'ah, instruction. So all this is a rhetorical question. So obviously, if Rashi is saying that there's a havamina, there's an idea that we could start the Torah from the first mitzvah, then let's look at the first mitzvah. The first mitzvah is HaChodesh hazeh lechem. This month, meaning Nisan, will be the first of the months of the year. According to tradition, this is the first mitzvah that the Jewish people get as a people. So if this is true, obviously this is telling us a lot, because the oral tradition is, it's not just that we were told that this month is the first of the months. Along with that came all of the wisdom of creating a Jewish calendar. That was part of the first mitzvah. Part of the first mitzvah is the wisdom to calculate the Jewish calendar. But between the lines, what we're being told, why are we being told this as we're getting ready to leave Egypt? And the message is, if you want to go from slavery to freedom, you have to become a master of time. Because if you're not a master of time, then you're a slave to time. And the whole idea here is we're getting ready to go from slavery to freedom. So the very first mitzvah we get has to do with time. So that already sets the stage for, call it the Jewish view of time. Time is not a secondary issue. It becomes a main theme of all Jewish thought. But we can go even earlier than that. And that was in last week's Parsha, where after Avram buries Sarah, so the Torah says, Avram zaken ba b'yamim, v'Hashem beirach et Avram bakol. That Avram, here's the enigmatic statement, came into days, and God blessed him with everything. So there's much discussion. What does it mean, came into days? Ba b'yamim. Many different commentaries, but the common denominator is that Abraham became, what we're talking about, a master of time. Not only did he have one foot in this world, but on the merit of Sarah, he already had one foot in the world to come. That's why we call the world to come Olam Haba. And that's what the pasuk says. Avram zaken ba b'yamim. So Avram at that point had one foot in this world and one foot in the world to come. But what does that mean according to Rabbi Nachman, the world to come? So Rabbi Nachman says the world to come is a world that is always coming in the present. That is what the world to come is. There is an aspect of the world to come that is after this world. There's no doubt about that. But there's also an aspect that the world to come is constantly coming into the present. We'll develop that theme more of how to draw the future into the present. So going back to this first mitzvah, HaChodesh hazeh lechem, this month. So we know, and this is one of the great secrets of all of Jewish life is that we have a very unique calendar. We have a lunar calendar that takes in account the solar calendar. The Gregorian calendar is a totally solar calendar. The Islamic calendar is a totally lunar calendar. And our calendar is a lunar calendar that takes in the aspect of the solar calendar. That is why we have leap years. Because if we didn't have leap years, Pesach would not come out in the spring. It says in the Torah a number of times that you have to make Pesach in the spring, because in the spring you came out of Egypt. In other words, Pesach is intrinsically connected with the energy of spring. Now, if you look at a totally lunar calendar, and this is not a value statement whatsoever, it's just fact, Ramadan is not connected to any season. That's why in approximately a 19-year cycle, Ramadan will go through the calendar. And it switches every 3 weeks. This year, let's say, I'm just making this up, let's say this year Ramadan is in December, in the end of December. The next year will be in the beginning of December, the next year in the middle of November, the next year at the end of October, and it will go through the cycle. In other words, again, it's not a value judgment, it's just not connected to a season. Pesach, the Torah says, must be in the spring, because in the spring you came out of Egypt. So along with this idea of the importance of time is the idea of hitchadshut, which means renewal. Because the name of a month, chodesh, is the same root as chadash. So in this verse, the root chodesh, chadash, appears 3 different times. HaChodesh hazeh lechem roshei chadashim rishon hu lechodshei hashana. It's a bit redundant, but we know that when something appears 3 times in Judaism, it's a chazaka. So in one verse, you have the root chadash 3 times, telling us not only is time important as the cardinal element between slavery and freedom, but the concept of renewal is vital to a sane spiritual person. Everyone knows the feeling of being stuck in a rut, of not feeling renewal in our lives, of being a slave to routine, a slave to someone else's clock. We all know that feeling at different times of our life. So here again, in the first mitzvah of the Torah, we're told if you want to be free, you have to know how to use time. And to know how to use time, you have to know what time is. So in one of the Tehillim, I think everyone has probably heard this, that Adam Arishon, he looks into the future, and he's shown all of the generations and all of the future tzaddikim. He looks in the future and he sees his soul, David. But he sees that David has no time allotted to him in this world. So the Midrash says that he volunteered, he donated 70 years of his life so that David would have time in this world. So that's why Adam lived to be 930 instead of 1,000. He was meant to live to be 1,000, but he donated 70 of his years. So we're told that one of the secrets of the soul of David is he was perpetually aware of this existential reality that in one sense he had time in this world, and in another sense he felt that he had no time. So that's why in one of the Tehillim God says, Hayom Yeladaticha. God is talking to David and says, today I have given birth to you. And so we're taught that David re-experienced a rebirth every day. Because in essence, he had no time. So every time was a gift to him. So that's why some of the Psalms reach such exalted heights. Because David was so grateful for every day that he had. That was his existential reality. Obviously, this is paving a way for ourselves. That the first thing we say in the morning is Modani lefanecha, that we give thanks as if maybe there wouldn't have been another day. When we go to sleep at night, that's why it's like a 1/60th of death. Sleep is 1/60th of death. So we wake up in the morning, it's a little bit like David, is, wow, another day. Hayom Yeladaticha. God has given birth to me, to you today. So now we'll learn a sod, an amazing, amazing secret. This verse, Achodesh Hazeh Lachem, this is the first of the months to you. And again, all of the secrets of the calendar is the 1,820th verse in the Torah. So you'll probably say, so. It is the 1,820th verse in the Torah. So what's the significance of 1,820? There is a verse, Sod Hashem li Reyav. The secret of God is to those that have awe or fear of him. The secret of God, Sod Hashem li Reyav, are to those who have awe or fear of him. So if you take the word Sod, equals 70, and you multiply it by Hashem's name, Sod Hashem. In other words, Sod times Hashem, you get 1,820. So what is the remez here? What is the hint? Knowing how to use time is one of the greatest secrets of understanding God. Because when you look at God's name, a Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, these form the three words that we use to describe time. Haya, Hoveh, Yiyah. In Adon Olam. V'hu Haya, V'hu Hoveh, V'hu Yiyah L'tifara. So all of the letters of time are the basic name of God, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. So this is considered a great sod of how to use time. We're going to go one step further, that this phrase, Sod Hashem li Re'av, equals 353, equals Simcha. So now this is telling us something even deeper about time. If one, and I'm sure everyone has experienced this or knows people, if someone is depressed, seriously depressed, you're frozen in time. Some people literally cannot get out of bed. But let's say you can. Let's say you can operate in this world, but you are depressed. It could be for a day, it could be for an hour, it could be for a month, it could be for much longer. But it's as if you're moving in slow motion. Like time is like your enemy. It's like you're trapped in time. You're trapped in your life. So this Sod Hashem is, in order to be able to become a master of time, you have to be b'simcha. And again, we're going to develop this even more. But you have to be b'simcha. So here we have two great secrets. That the secret of God is to be joyous, and the secret of God is to become a master of time. And then you put those together, 1 and 1 equals 2, and then you put those together, and then when you're b'simcha, then you have an opportunity, a chance to get a handle on time, to make time not your enemy, but your best friend. So now let's look at 4 perspectives of time. Each one is true and has its own consequences and reality. They're all true at the same time. The first one, we'll call it from below to above. The first one is linear time. This is how most people experience time. It's a little bit like being on a canoe in a river with a fairly strong current. And one just feels they are being carried by the current. It is going in one direction. In science, this is actually one of the great mysteries of science. It's called the arrow of time. Because, as Einstein revealed, time is also conceived as a dimension. Space and time are intrinsically woven together. They cannot be separated. Space-time continuum. And in space, the dimensions go in 2 directions. Height, width, and breadth are two-dimensional. They're going in 2 directions. Only time goes in 1 direction. But we're going to see later how we can overcome that. So we're just being carried by the river of time. That's called linear time. Past, present, future. Once the moment is gone, it's in the past, and that's it. It's gone. The advantage of understanding this is exactly what I just said. If we realize that every moment, once it's gone, it should give us tremendous incentive to use every minute to the best of our ability, because once it's gone, it's gone. So there's actually a great benefit to the linear concept of time. Then there is we'll call it the circular, or the cyclic view of time, which is also a reality. As we know, the seasons go in their circle. If the arrow of time is only going like this, you'd have spring, summer, fall, winter, and then what? It returns. The trees return. Vegetation returns. The holidays return. The months return. Our birthdays return. So all of this is going in a circle, in a cycle. What Joni Mitchell called the carousel of time. But she said we're stuck on the carousel of time. So when we are a slave to time, then time also can just go like this, right? Just running in circles. The advantage is there's a tremendous wisdom in understanding the cycles of time. The Torah establishes the cycles of time from Bereshit. Shabbat establishes a cycle of time. In the world today, It's called a 24/7 world. For the older generation here, remember that the 2 or 3 TV stations that there were, they went off at 12 o'clock, right, into static land, right? Radios, most radios, 2 o'clock, that's like, remember 7-Eleven, a store staying open till 11 o'clock at night? It was like revolutionary. Now it's a 24/7 world, except it's like 250 stations going 24 hours a day. Everything is 24/7 now. So that's like linear time. It just goes and goes and goes and goes. The Torah establishes the idea of cycles right from the beginning, Shabbat. For us, we are plugged in to the cycle of time. And there's actually 7 cycles of 7. There's 7 days, 7 weeks of the Omer. All of our pilgrimage holidays, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, happen in the first 7 months of the year. 7 months, 7 years of Shemitah, 7 times 7 years of Shemitah and of Yovel, 6,000 years of history and the awaited 7,000th, that's 6 cycles now. And then there's a concept in Kabbalah called 49,000 Yovelot, Yovel years, 49,000, meaning like an infinite amount of time in the world to come. So the idea of cycles is embedded in our whole Jewish lifestyle. But now we're going to bump it up a notch to a spiral. A spiral is a circle, but each time it goes up a level or a dimension. So what happens if you have a spiral going up, and you pick any point on the spiral and you go down? So then you'll connect to every other point in the circle in the same place or time. So an example is, I experienced this, so that's the example I'm going to use, is at the Seder of Pesach. You're sitting at the Seder, and all of these memories of past Pesachs just like well up. You're in the present, but because you're in the spiral, you can touch every point of Pesach all the ways down. All the ways down back to Mitzrayim. That's the whole idea of the Seder, is the idea of reliving, of visualizing being in Egypt. B'chol dor v'dor, that's what it says. Chayav adam lirot et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. So how do we do? Everyone is obligated to see themselves as if they came out of Egypt. So how do we do that? We do that because of this secret of the spiral. Hopefully we're going to get back to that also. And then one more level. And this is connecting to divine time. So we're told, as we said before, the 4 letters of God's name are Haya, Hoveh, V'Yiyeh. And we're told that God's experience of time, as much as we understand, is beyond time, where past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. Now, we have had this tradition for ages, that God creates time, but he's also beyond time. And this is one of the secrets of when Avram says to God, who is going to inherit me? And it says, and God took him outside and said, if you can count the stars, that will be how many your seed will be. So Rashi says a number of things on this. He actually gives 3 different explanations. He says, remember it says God took him outside. So Rashi said, God said to Avram, go outside of your astrology, which is telling you that you cannot have children. We're actually told that Avram and Sarah biologically were not able to have children. But Avram, according to the Gemara, was the greatest astrologer of his age. And he saw that he wasn't meant to have children. So he says, who's going to inherit me? So God says, you have to go outside of your preconceived notions of what you think is possible. And then he brings another parish where it says, Avram cannot have children, but Avraham can. And then the last thing Rashi says, it says God took him outside of the atmosphere, and he allowed him to look down on his situation. So what does that mean? What it means is God took him and gave him a divine perspective of reality, including time. Now this is where prophecy comes from. Prophecy, in short, is God grants a person a view of the future in the present. So you'll say, well, how is that possible? The future has not happened yet. But for God, it has happened already. As maybe illogical that sounds. Past, present, and future are all one thing to God. And we actually have it in Hebrew. And that is that the word for, first of all, the word for time is zman. When we eat as a group and we make a zimun, comes from the same root as zman. But what does zimun mean here? It means, in a sense, prepare yourself to come together in order to bless God. Zimun means prepared. Lahazmin. Lahazmin in modern Hebrew means to order something, to receive something. Lahazmin. But also the word for future, atid. Atid comes from 8, which means time. 8. Atid is just a extension of the root of 8, atid. And in Megillat Esther, when after Haman is hung, and Esther prevails on Ahasuerus to send out another letter to the Jews, it says to tell them to be prepared for the 13th of Adar, to defend yourself against your enemies. And the verb there is atidim, to be prepared, from the word future, because he was saying in the future. So the future is prepared, and it's already present in the present. When we become a master of time, we know how to then pull the future into the present. So now, having said all that, there's a lot more that we could say from Jewish sources. This was just a little sampling. This is a sampling. But now, we're going to take this and we're going to get to like the crux of the Indian. So the question is, okay, so how do you do it? How do we become a master of time? How do we learn to use our time in the best way? So this is probably the essence of everything I'm saying. And I have to be honest, when I wrote this book, it helped me immensely to be able to integrate what I was trying to give over. In other words, most of the books I write is because I have a tremendous interest in the subject, and I figure if I do, then I guess other people do also, or should have. But what I'm going to say now gets to the essence of how to do it. So if you go to a bookstore and you look on the shelf and you have your self-help section, you'll probably find scores of time management books. So that's why the subtitle of this book is called A Spiritual Guide to Time Management. Because these books, I've read them and I use them. They have some excellent ideas. But the problem is that you could read all of the time management books in the world, and that will not really help you become a master of time. Because there are a few ingredients that would be missing. And those ingredients are purpose, mission, focus, and will. And purpose, mission, focus, and will. A person who knows what to do with time is because time is important to them because they have a purpose in life. The purpose in life can go from saving the world to being a good husband, being a good wife, being a good son, being a good daughter, being a good father, being a good community member, being a good shul goer. All kinds of purposes in this world, being Eved Hashem, or to help fix the world. To be a doctor, to be a teacher, to whatever, to develop our creative aspects, the gifts that God has given us. There are many types of purpose. But without purpose, you can know all the skills of how to write these lists, and it won't do any good. Because you get up in the morning and directionless, exactly. So these are the 4 words that we want to focus on. Focus is purpose, mission, focus, and will. We have an expression, Ein devar omed lifnei haratzon. Nothing stands in the way of will. The question is, do we apply our will? Or are we, in a sense, on the river of time? We reach our comfort zone, whatever that is, and there's nothing wrong with that, but we have our job, we have our family, we have our community, and we're on automatic pilot, basically. And we're just going along the river. Or are there things that we're willing to really apply our will? To apply our will takes work. No one should make a mistake. To get a handle on time is work. You have to really work at it. But the rewards are astounding. I think everyone has experienced, at the end of the day, you say to yourself, I can't believe it. I didn't do anything today. Where did the day go? I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. This phone call, and this email, and that Facebook got me involved, and I wanted to do this project, but I decided to do an easier one, and then I lost interest. You get to the end of the day and what did I do? And then there are days you get to the end of the day and you say, I can't believe what I got done today. I can't believe how much I experienced in this one day. in a sense, every day we have the choice, which day is it going to be? It can go either way. And that's the fifth word I didn't mention, is choice. Purpose, mission, focus, will, and choice. Going back to what we said before, the secret of God, or to those that fear Him, equals joy. So, the way I look at it is, when it gets down to it, we have one choice to make in life. Whether we're going to approach life in a joyous way or not a joyous way. We have hundreds of little decisions we make every day. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about real choice. And I once learned this from Rabbi Shlomo. He said, again going back to the first mitzvah, he said, what's the definition of freedom? So this is the example that he used, but you could replace it with 1,000 different things. He said, the definition of freedom is, today I felt depressed. Yesterday I was depressed. Last week I was depressed. When I look at it, this whole last year I've been depressed. So Reb Shlomo said, so what is freedom? 1 minute from now, I do not have to be depressed. That's called will, and that's called choice. And every person has that. We have to have the will to use our will. We have to apply our will to make choices. So I want to tell a few quick stories. Once, the Lubavitcher Rabbi said to one of the students, he said, did they call mincha for 5 or 5:10? And the Rebbe, and the student said, I don't know. It's either 5 or 5:10. And the Rebbe said, it makes a big difference. Do you know what you can do in 10 minutes? Do you know what you can do in 10 minutes? So I have a personal story. For a couple of years, I learned with my son every week. We learned Gemara. We made a bunch of siyums together. And one of the siyums we made was on Masechet Tani. And then a few years later, he invited my wife and I. He's making another siyum in Tanit. So my wife said to him, when did you learn Tanit again? Didn't you make a siyum with your Abba already? He said, I learned it in 5 minutes. She said, what do you mean you learned it in 5 minutes? He said, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. You know, as he went over it, when he was at the bus stop, when he was waiting in line at the store, when he was at home between, 2 errands, like for real, he learned it in 5 minutes. Another story of the Arizal, very famous story of the Arizal, that I'm so glad that the Arieh was a big proponent of a Shabbos nap. Because I love my Shabbos naps, and to know that the Arieh also loved his Shabbos nap. So one time, he told his student to wake him up at a certain time. And his nap was like a half an hour. And so the student was in the room, and he sees that the Arieh's lips are moving the whole time. He's sleeping. His lips are moving the whole time. And it comes time to wake him up, and he's like something is going on here. Like, how can I wake him up? But he told me to wake him up. How can I not wake him up? He really had a dilemma. But okay, he told him to wake him up at a certain time. So he wakes him up. And he said, Rabbi, do you realize that your lips were moving the whole time that you were sleeping? And he said, yes. And he said, can I ask what was happening? So he said, you have to understand, the Arieh was an incredibly humble person, a very tsunua person, very hidden. So you have to take his words that he wasn't bragging. So he said, when I sleep, my soul goes to the yeshiva lamala, and each time I learn with a different sage or prophet or avot. And so the student said, well, can you tell me something that you just learned? And the Arieh said to him, and there are two different versions. Either one is beyond us. I think one version, he said, if I had 8 years, it would not be enough to tell you what I just learned in the last 30 minutes. The other version is, this is how I originally heard it, if I had 80 years, it would be not enough to tell you what I learned in the last half an hour. So it's also told about Rabbi Nachman that he said about himself, he said, when I was younger, it would take me a month to accomplish a certain avoda, a certain service of God. And then I learned to do it in a week. And then I learned to do it in a day. And now I can do it in 5 minutes. So, the Baal Shem also gave over a great teaching here called Zrizut b'netinut. Zrizut means doing things fast. B'netinut means to do them slow. So he said the secret of becoming a master of time is to be able to do things quickly in a slow way. And this gets to the next big subject where we don't have all night. Even time is limited here, is consciousness. Because how do we apply our will? How do we make these choices of how to use time? How to apply ourselves to a mission in life? To mitzamtzem, to contract our infinite possibilities to accomplish something. In a 24/7 world, and we'll get to this in a minute, with technology today, it is so distracting to stay in tune, in line. There are so many distractions. And the answer is consciousness. It says in the Sefer Yetzirah, all of Sefer Yetzirah is based on the idea that all of reality is made up of 3 types of dimensions. Olam, Shana, Nefesh. World, Olam. Shana means year or time. World means space. Shana means time, year. And Nefesh means soul or consciousness. So what Einstein did is he put together Olam and Shana. He put together space and time. And he showed that they are intrinsically connected together. But what about Nefesh? What about the other dimension that Sefer Yetzirah talked about? So I invite any of you, just Google the role of human consciousness in quantum physics today. Right now, I'll say it again. The role of human consciousness in physics today, or quantum physics today. Right now, in science, the absolute cutting edge of all science is the realization of the importance of human consciousness in determining reality. So I said we would put in a little bit of science here. When I went to school, we learned about the atom, and all they knew about the atom was that there was a nucleus, a proton, and an electron. That's all we knew. Now, in 7th grade physics, there are scores and scores and scores of particles, of atomic particles and molecular quarks, and you know, every few months they're discovering another one. And just want to get this right. Now, when they talk about so we learned the electron was a thing, an entity, a piece of matter. They don't talk like that anymore. An electron is a wave function. It is here and there and everywhere at the same time. Quantum physics is the most counterintuitive thing you can imagine, which is incredibly ironic. But quantum physics is totally, from the way we experience the world, the way they describe what the world really is, it's so far away from the way we experience it. So, in hundreds of experiments, and this is the language of science, is that when an atom is being watched, when human consciousness wants to establish the electron as something that you could grasp, the language of science is the electron is forced to take a position. It's like, it's mind-blowing. In other words, without human consciousness, the electron it's not a thing anymore. It's an energy that it's everywhere. When human consciousness wants to pinpoint it, it forces the electron. So what the ramification of this is how human consciousness, and really divine consciousness, establishes what reality is. And so we know from science now that time is relative. Newton said time is not affected by anything. It is constant and nothing affects it. Einstein came and said it's not true. Many things affect time. Technically, if you have two cars, let's say they're racing each other, and they're racing cars, and one's going 200 miles an hour, and one is going 150 miles an hour. And if you had atomic clocks in each car, they'd have different time. All the more so as you get towards the speed of light. But we don't feel the difference, so it's basically irrelevant to us. But in these super colliders, when you send atoms at speeds close to the speed of light, I'm sure everyone has heard this, when matter gets towards the speed of light, time slows down. When it gets to the speed of light, no time passes. There is no time. It's past, present, and future all together. And so this is the divine aspect of time. So now we have a divine soul. We have a divine soul. And therefore, when we apply our consciousness to a task, through focus, then we, as it were, can stretch time. That's a key here. When we take all of these words again, focus, mission, purpose, choice, will, and we apply ourselves, so what happens to time? Time becomes our tool. It's not something that is dragging us along. We start to control time, up to a point where human beings, we live in a somewhat limited physical world. So I'm not proposing that we can do anything we want, anytime we want. That's not the point. But the point is that if we want to get something done, and it's important to us, then we will find the time. Everyone knows idea. If someone asks, where do you find time to X? So the answer is, you never find time. You make time. You make time for those things that are important to you. Again, just a personal example. When I was living in Denver, I came to Denver like skinny as a rail. And then I got into my 40s, and I looked one day in the mirror and like, where did that belly come from? Like, how did that happen? And so then I was like, okay, I guess I have to exercise. And for like a year or two, it was like, I was very busy. I don't have time. I don't have time. And at a certain point, it was like, okay, this is getting serious here. This is a serious belly here. I made time. But it's true for everything. Especially, again, in a technological age that we're in, where there's just so much happening, you don't find time for it. You have to make time. And you make time again, I hate to use these words again, through having purpose and a mission and focus and will and choice and consciousness. That is how you make time. You make time. Wow, there's so much more to say.
Go for it, we're not going anywhere.
What?
Go for it, we're not going anywhere.
Okay, so here's what I'll provide. I'm going to continue. If anyone needs to leave, I will not be insulted. I will not feel bad. People have things to do.
No, we have time.
Yeah, we have. For those who want to make time, we will continue a little farther with some other beautiful ideas. So, the Baal Shem Tov taught a concept, and he said, if you hold on to a part, you hold on to the whole. Okay, so the Slonim Rebbe brings us a number of times in the Tivat Shalom. And the example he gives like this: if someone is on a ship and they fall overboard, and he's going to drown, they throw him a rope from the ship, and he grabs onto the rope. As long as he's holding onto the rope, he's connected to the ship. So if you hold onto a part, you hold onto the whole. What's an example of this? We're told that Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. So someone might say, just at 1/60th? Like, it's not very much. But if you hold on to a part, you hold on to the whole. Meaning, Shabbat connects us to infinite light. And it connects us to this idea of being beyond time. And that's why the three segments of Shabbat is the night is Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit, that Shabbat is a remembrance of the creation. It brings us back to the creation. The day is Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. It's when we come out of Egypt and receive the Torah. That's why we read the Torah on Shabbos day. And Shalashudas is the Shabbat of the future, of Yom Shekulo Shabbat. So Shabbat has Haya, Hover, V'Yiyah, past, present, and future. And if you hold on to a part, you hold on to the whole. So another beautiful secret here is the numerical value, the gematria of Shabbat is 702, which when you inverse the number, 702 is 207. Anyone know what 207 is, gematria? Or. And Ein Sof. Or and Ein Sof are the same gematria, 207. So this is one of there are halakhic and practical reasons why women light candles at the beginning of Shabbat. We're actually told to have shalom bayit. In the old days, they didn't have electric lights, and for shalom bayit, you need light in the house. Or someone's going to trip over something, someone's going to get angry, and you have no shalom bayit. That's the practical halachic reason that's brought. But there's no doubt, especially when women go like this, right? They're bringing in the Or Ein Sof. They're bringing in the infinite light into the Shabbat. Into the Shabbat. And so, having touched on light, so if we go back to science, and we talked about that when matter increases in velocity and approaches the speed of light, time slows down. And this is the whole linchpin of the relativity of time. And we talked about, though, that human consciousness is connected to light. Because when we talk about being enlightened, so it's like the comic strip of the light bulb going off in your head, right? You know the comic, you have an idea, and it's the light bulb goes off in your head. But the amazing thing is, we now know that that's biologically true. Because what? The brain is basically, it's like an electric conductor. And when you have an idea or a thought, it's shots of electricity through synapses. That's what's actually happening. Your brain is an electric conductor. It's light. Consciousness is light. So this idea of being enlightened is actually very accurate description. So if one so thought in a sense is light. Quite literally, that's what thought is, light. So if your mind is connected to light, to God's light, to the light of the Torah, then, as it were, time slows down. time becomes your tool. And going back to the first mitzvah, it becomes your ticket to freedom. So an amazing connection to this is that, again, the Baal Shem said, if you hold on to a part, so the word there is chelek. A part is a chelek. So we have the expression that the divine soul is a chelek Eloka mima'al mamash, is an actual part of God above. And God is, again, we're not talking about the essence of God, but the best we could describe is light. The light of Hashem. So when we are connected to the essence of our own soul, and we're aware of our different purposes in life, then we are motivated to apply our will to fulfill those purposes. And because it's connected to thought and consciousness, so time becomes relative. And that's why the expression, if you've ever thought about it, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. So you'll say, wait, that doesn't make sense. They're so busy already. Why are they busy? Because they know what to do with time. Someone who's not so busy, that's not who you want to turn to. You want to turn to someone who knows how to get things done, who knows how to make things happen. They make time. Okay, now, to bring it to our reality, that I'm sure many of you are aware of this, but the Zohar predicted, based on the fact that Noah was 600 years old at the time of the flood, so 2,000 years ago, the Zohar said that in the 600th year of the 6th millennium, the floodgates of water from above would come and flood the world, and the floodgates from the Tehom, from the depths, would rise up and flood the world. So, what does this mean? So, first of all, the 600th year of the 6th millennium is, the 6th millennium began in the year 5000. We're in the 6th millennium right now. So the 600th year was 5600 in our calendar. Right now we're in 5778. So 178 years ago was, in the Gregorian calendar, was 1840. So the Zohar said in 1840, the upper waters and the lower waters, just like at the time of the flood of Noah, would flood the world. What did the Zohar mean? The lower worlds were secular knowledge, and the upper waters is Torah wisdom. And they would flood the world. But really, the beginning of the 600th year, just like if someone turns 70, the whole next year, if you ask, how old are you? I'm 70, but you're really in your 71st year. So the period we're talking about is from 1740 to 1840. 1740, Pachot or Yoter, begins the Industrial Revolution. And ever since, the technological advances just increase and increase and increase. Going from the first steamboat, the first cotton gin, to the first train, first telegraph, first telephone, first airplane, first rocket ship, first computer, onward and onward and onward. So exactly what the Zohar predicted has come true. What about the Torah wisdom? Baal Shem Tov. The beginning of Chassidut and the opening of the gates of Kabbalah to the world. It had never been opened before in such a manner. And so many great rabbis today recognize that technology, I didn't say an important thing. The Zohar said that all of this would happen in preparation for the coming of Mashiach. I left that out, I'm sorry. In preparation for the coming of Mashiach. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe and many contemporary rabbis recognize that the advances in technology is an intrinsic part of the changes that have to happen in the world to bring Mashiach. So to apply this to our topic of time, Rabbi Nachman said people have a very hard time understanding God's perspective of time, where past, present, and future are all present at the same time. He said, but as a person becomes more elevated, more refined, more godly, the less boundaries there are to time. So we see it in the physical world. Listen to this, it's quite amazing. Because all of these advances were through human consciousness, through brain power. What used to take a trip from New York to London on a boat, maybe a couple of months, can be now done in like 7 hours. If you wanted to get a message from here to Australia, it could take 3 to 6 months, and it might never ever get there. You never even knew if it got there. Now it's instantaneous. You see what's happened to time? As human consciousness increases, whether from a secular point of view or a more spiritual point of view, time, the obstacles of time get less and less. And we're only really beginning the process, all in preparation for the Messianic times. But we can also do it in our consciousness. We can also do it in our consciousness. And that's why, I remember Reb Shlomo taught this all the time, Reb Ginsburg teaches this all the time, that we have to already, in a sense, be acting in the present in Mashiach mode. Reb Shlomo used to always say, it's like if he was trying to describe one of his concerts where it went on for hours and hours and everyone was just flying, he would say it was like after Mashiach came. But why? Because he was drawing that energy right there, right into the world. And everyone can do that. Everyone can draw from a more perfected world, a more perfected us, a vision of our own potential, what we could be, we could draw it into the present and make it happen. So I'm just going to kind of tie this all together now, and we'll open it up for questions or comments or anything. I do want to thank, again, Yubane, the Postons, for having me. Thank you all for coming. Some of my books are available. You won't get such good prices anyplace else. Take advantage. Trying to pick one last gem here. It's not easy. Okay, I'll do this one. If everyone remembers the story of Pinchas. So, Zimri takes Cosby, challenges Moshe. Moshe doesn't know what to do. It's a huge Chilul Hashem that's happening, and a plague breaks out in the camp, and people are dying left and right. And it says that Pinchas came, and he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, isn't this the halacha of what we can do in this situation? And Moshe, he himself had forgotten the halacha because the situation was so out of hand. And he said, you're right. If you thought about it, you do it. So Pinchas goes and he kills Zimri and Cosby and stops the plague. That's a part of the story most people don't appreciate. He stopped the plague. And in the next parsha, he gets a covenant of peace. And from that point, in the rest of the Torah, there's no more machloket, there's no more rebellions. Pinchas did, however we understand it, he changed something. So the Zohar explains where Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what to do. How did Pinchas know what to do? So the Zohar teaches, the Arieh teaches, that at that moment, the souls of Nadav and Avihu entered into Pinchas and gave him the strength, really like superhuman strength, to do what he did. In the Arieh, this is called Ibor, a pregnancy. A soul enters another soul to help it for a short time. And then the Gemara later says, Pinchas ze Eliyahu. Pinchas, however it's understood, was Eliyahu was a Gilgul, was a reincarnation of Pinchas, or that Pinchas was transformed into Eliyahu. What happened to Eliyahu? He rose to heaven in a fiery chariot. So, what's the importance of the story for us? It's actually a very important message here, is a person can do something in the moment that can be eternal. Because Eliyahu Navi, the whole idea of him going up to heaven in a fiery chariot and his soul being able to come back and help people and all of this, it all came from one act. And that act drew the past, Nadav and Avihu, into Pinchas, who becomes Eliyahu. So this is the power of learning to use our time well. And I'm sure everyone here has had those eternal moments, those peak moments. Could be when a child is born, it could be at the kotel, it could be getting married, it could be a revelation that we had, whatever it is. It usually only happens for a few seconds, a few minutes, and it stays with us forever. It changes us, it formulates who we are. That is the power of time. The power of time, an act in a moment with kavana, with focus, with purpose, can turn into eternal meaning, eternal value. So I'm going to end with a bracha. And the bracha is that, having said everything that we've said, I'll tell a quick story from the Arieh that will make my point. Rabbi Chaim Vital, his student, his main student, who was a genius of geniuses, he once said to the Arieh, how come you reached levels that I couldn't reach. And the Arieh said, because I worked hard. And Rabbi Chaim Vital said, I also worked hard. And the Arieh said, but not as hard as I did. So becoming a master of time is hard work. There are no guarantees. There's no absolutes. If you hold on to a part, you hold on to the whole. In other words, even progress in this area is a big thing. We don't have to hold out for ourselves like Mission Impossible. Each and every one of us has the ability and the power to take control of our lives in a way that we are directing the time in our life and not that we are a slave to time. So I bless everyone to make that effort, and the reward should be great. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yeah.
So we wrote a book about music also. Music is vibration
Yes.
and waves and light. You know, like it's vibration, but it's waves. So what about the connection?
You answered your question, because music is light. Music is light, it's creation. I mean, that's the basis of the book, is that all of reality from a scientific point of view and from a Torah point of view is music. The fabric of the universe, spiritual and physical, is music, and music is light. Anything else? Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about time, thinking in months and days. We have a cosmological connection between, for example, days, the time the Earth is going around herself, and the month, the time the Moon is going around the Earth, and the year, the time that the Earth is going around the Sun. So is there a connection, is there a cosmological explanation for Shabbat? This is one quick question. And the other one about quantum physics, I forgot, but maybe
I hear your question.
yeah.
I hear your question. In a sense, the cycle of 7 is superimposed. In other words, in theory, God could have created the world in 12 days, or periods, whatever, however you want to say it, and then rested, or 30, or 365. So the idea of 7, those 7 sevens that I said, 7 days, 7 weeks, 7 months, 7 years, 7 times 7 years, these are superimposed.
So there's
God is revealing that the Gemara says all 7s are precious. So there are connections. We're told that approximately every 7 years, all of the cells in our body regenerate. That in 7 years, we have none of the same cells as we did 7 years ago. There's a reality, but it's.
But I'm starting on Shabbos.
Well, Shabbos is 7.
I know, but
So it's
if there is a connection with the cosmological order that we find in the explanation of day and month and
Well,
year,
again. So that's
it
what
looks like it misses a glue here. There's something that can be explained, maybe can be explained even
Well, part of it, I have to say, part of it is that a month is, the way we think about it, is 4 weeks. It's really 29 and a quarter days is a month, but it's basic. That's why Shlomo Melech, when he said there's a time and a season for everything, there are 28 times. 28 times. So the idea of the 7 And, oh wait, listen, okay, now I'm getting there. If you look at the moon, we talk about a full moon, a half moon, the new moon, and then it's a half moon again. And these are basically 7 days.
Quarter of a month.
Yeah,
Every quarter
yeah,
we
but
have-
you can actually see it, like when the moon isn't, you can see when it's a half, when it's full. But still, I'm still sticking a little bit with what I said, that the idea that we have to rest our fields every 7 years, it could have been 8 years, it could have been 4 years. God set, that's the whole importance of Shabbat, He set this cycle in reality that it is superimposed. It is superimposed on a more physical reality of the 365 days makes a year, or the 30 days of the cycle of the moon makes a month. Those are, like you say, those are set in the laws of nature.
Yeah.
But the sevens, not that they're not connected to nature, but they're one level above, in a sense. Like one level above, superimposed onto the structure. Onto the structure. That's how I see it anyways.
Thank you.
Someone might have a different concept, that's how I see it. Anyone else? Okay, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.